Recently, I met a great guy. The only thing is, we're very different. I'm very shy and rarely make impulsive decisions. My days are usually monotonous and boring. Brian, on the other hand, is the complete opposite. He loves taking risks, spending time on extreme activities, and always looking for new adventures. I don't know what he sees in me, such a scaredy cat, but he says he loves me. Maybe opposites really do attract. I also really enjoy spending time with him. The time I spend with him always evokes a lot of emotions in me, often strong fear. On that day, everything outside was gray, and it was raining. I really wanted to see Brian, but it didn't work out because of the rain. The phone rang in the apartment, probably one of my mom's friends. I heard footsteps in the hallway. The door opened, and my mom walked into my room looking displeased. "It's your Brian calling again." My mom's face was displeased. She's good, but she doesn't like Brian. She really doesn't like that he prefers extreme activities. She also doesn't like that he's not from the city, but from a small town. She thinks he's uneducated, a country bumpkin. In short, she doesn't think he's a good match for me. We've argued a lot over this, but eventually she had to accept it. I picked up the phone. "Hello?" "Hey, my scaredy cat," said Brian. "I think I told you not to call me that." "Just kidding. Don't be mad at me. I've got some crazy news." I immediately got uneasy because after these words, he usually suggests something wild. "I found out about a place, 30 kilometers from your city. There's an abandoned village." He paused. "So?" I said skeptically. "I don't hear any excitement." "We're going there this weekend." "How about we just go to the movies instead?" I suggested. "Chickening out again? I told you, you're a scaredy cat." "Yeah, and you're the coward." "Well then, prove me wrong. Let's go to the abandoned village." I was so annoyed that he kept calling me a scaredy cat that I decided to agree. He would have convinced me anyway. "Okay, I agree. Let's see who's the real coward here." "Great. See you then. I gotta go." "Talk to you later." After the conversation, I returned the phone to my mom. He probably suggested something bad again, didn't he? "No, Mom, he invited me to the movies, then for a walk in the park." Well, if that's all, I went back to my room and started regretting that I agreed. I began to worry. What if it's dangerous? I was so anxious that I got a headache. I decided to distract myself by watching a TV show. After watching a few episodes, I got sleepy. I turned off the TV and the lights, wrapped myself in a warm blanket and closed my eyes. But anxious thoughts crept back into my mind. What if we meet an aggressive homeless person or a maniac there? It took me a couple of hours to fall asleep. All week I was nervous about the upcoming weekend. I really wanted to cancel, but on the other hand, I wanted to go. That's probably why I'm so crazy about Brian. He's shown me a completely different world. All these adventures are so terrifying and, at the same time, unbearable for me. But on the other hand, these adrenaline-fueled emotions are probably the best. You can never forget such intense experiences and adventures. Saturday arrived. Brian came to pick me up but didn't come up to the apartment. It seemed reasonable to me. Otherwise, they could have argued with my mom and ruined their relationship even more. When I came outside, Brian hugged me, and his mood was joyful. I was also very happy to see him, but anxiety was taking over. Why so serious? Scaredy cat? I immediately got angry. "Go by yourself then, tough guy." Okay, I give up. Let's go." We drove to the edge of the city and waited for the bus that was heading towards the abandoned village. At the bus stop, we held hands and shared the week's highlights. Time passed so quickly that we didn't notice how 30 minutes flew by, and the bus arrived. Getting on the bus, Brian asked the driver to drop us off at the 30th kilometer, and we took our seats. I started getting anxious again and got lost in my thoughts. Brian even got a little upset that I wasn't listening to him, but then he realized I was scared and started comforting me. To my great relief, it worked. We arrived fairly quickly. There was nothing around, just the road and the forest on both sides. Brian took out a map from his backpack and examined it carefully. He looked around hesitantly. "That way," he said. Are you sure? Yeah, I'm sure. We headed straight into the forest. Surprisingly, it was nice in the woods. We came across mushrooms, fir trees, pines, and squirrels. It was beautiful. Suddenly, old dilapidated buildings appeared through the trees. I was gripped by fear, but Brian started jumping with joy. Yay, we found it! Honestly, sorry, but I wasn't sure this was the right place, he said. That made me angry. I hoped he was joking. Then he rushed to the first house. There were no windows in the house. Let's climb through the window, he said excitedly. With a quick movement, Brian jumped through the window and held out his hand to me. What else can I do? Since I'm here, I have to go. Reluctantly, I took his hand. He pulled me up, and we ended up inside the house. Is anyone home? Brian shouted loudly. The shout scared me. What if a psycho jumps out and kills us? But to my relief, there was only silence. Why are you shouting? I said irritably. I wanted to check if anyone's home. Why check after we've already climbed in? Stop nagging, scaredy cat. Don't shout like that again or I'm going home. I'm not sure you'll find your way back. Fine, I'll try to find my way home rather than stay here with you. Okay, I'm sorry. Why do you get mad so quickly? Then he hugged me. At least now we know for sure that we're alone here. Brian was annoying, but once again, he managed to calm me down. After inspecting the house and making sure no one was there, the fear subsided. There was a lot of interesting stuff in the house, like old cuckoo clocks and old toys, though they scared me a bit. There were also many different figurines. We went through all the rooms, and then Brian suggested going to another house. The windows were intact, but the door was open. We confidently entered the house and immediately noticed a strong, unpleasant smell. Brian gestured for me to be quiet and carefully moved down the hallway. Reaching the kitchen, he smiled. It's fine, come in. In the kitchen were swollen old cans that had burst, giving off a foul odor. In another house, we found a dead bird. There were many houses, and time flew by. Looking at the clock, I saw it would soon get dark, and it was time to head back. Brian began convincing me to visit one more house. Of course, that's his style. I reluctantly agreed. He carefully looked around. Let's go to that house. Visually, it looked the most intact. Okay, let's go, but quickly. When we approached the door, it wouldn't open, and the windows were intact. Well, no luck. Let's go home, I said. Wait, hold on. Brian reached into his backpack and pulled out a piece of wire. Watch this, he said as he inserted the wire into the lock and started fiddling with it. I watched some videos on how to do this. It'll work in a second. The lock clicked. Voila, see? Brian released the handle and the door opened. A bad smell hit us immediately, but we weren't scared anymore. Let's go quickly before it gets too late, I said. We followed him into the house and the door slammed shut. I even screamed as my heart started pounding. Brian laughed. Don't worry, it's just the wind. I tried to open the handle, but the door was locked. Don't stress, Brian said. It's an automatic lock. Let's hurry and check things out, he said, and I was on the verge of refusing. We went into the kitchen. Everything seemed normal there. Then we walked down the hallway towards the far room. The closer we got, the stronger the stench became. Brian, I'm scared. Let's go home. I have a bad feeling about this. But if we go home now, we won't find out what's behind this door. Fine, go on your own. I'll wait in the kitchen. Okay, I'll be quick and then we'll leave, my scaredy cat. Brian confidently walked to the door, and I quickly returned to the kitchen. I heard the door to the far room open. Brian went quiet. Then a few seconds later, I heard his scream. It was loud. Then, there was a loud thud. I peeked out of the kitchen and saw Brian on the floor with a smashed head. I was overwhelmed with fear, and I quietly hid in a cupboard. I was shaking. The first thought that came to mind was that Brian had been killed. I took out my phone and saw I had only 1% battery left. I quickly texted my mom. Mom, Brian's been killed. We're somewhere in an abandoned village. Send help. My mom started calling, but I ended the call. What is she thinking? Calling me. I'm going to get caught and killed. I tried to explain to her where I was, but at that moment, the phone died. It was dark outside and I could hear rustling from the other room. Someone was definitely in there. What if they start searching for me? I had said out loud that I was in the kitchen. I started praying. My head was spinning from fear. Time was dragging painfully. The thought that I could be killed at any moment was terrifying. I sat in the cupboard, hugging my knees, trembling. I was crying, and it made things worse. I couldn't breathe through my nose, and I couldn't sob loudly or they'd hear me. Suddenly, the front door slammed open and a flashlight lit up the hallway. I looked through the crack at the light and started saying goodbye to the world. Suddenly, I heard a voice. "No body of a girl. Continuing the search." The person with the flashlight kept moving, lighting up the kitchen. I didn't move. He continued further down the hallway. Then I heard more voices outside. I heard my mom's voice. It finally dawned on me that it was the police. I started yelling for help. The person with the flashlight turned back and opened the cupboard. It was a police officer. He led me outside, and my mom ran up to me and hugged me tightly. There was an ambulance there too. The doctors started checking me out. I heard the officer on the radio. He said there was a second body. My head started spinning. Another officer questioned me, then called over my dad, said something to him, and we drove home. After some time, my mom told me that the investigation showed that Brian, after seeing the body, got scared, ran back quickly, tripped over a threshold, hit his head, and died. The sounds from the room were due to rats eating the other body. But this information wasn't enough for me. I was constantly tormented by doubts that I wasn't being told everything. I regularly asked my mom to tell me the whole truth, but she assured me that I already knew everything. But one day, my mom and I had a huge fight. No, she didn't plan on telling me. She just couldn't hold back in a moment of anger. We argued, and in the heat of the moment, she yelled, "You don't appreciate your mother. If you're so grown up, know the truth. Brian died because of you. If you hadn't chickened out and pressed on his wound, he would have survived. But you acted selfishly." I wilted. Tears froze on my face. Like a zombie, I went to my room. Afterward, I went to Brian's parents, wanting to ask them everything. They kicked me out and said they never wanted to see me again because it was all my fault. I stopped talking to my parents. And a few days ago, I had a dream about Brian. Don't listen to them. You did everything right. What if there had been a killer? They've never been in that situation. They don't understand. I love you and ask you not to worry. Try to pull yourself together. Let go of this situation, and everything will get better. When I woke up, I felt better. I didn't know if it was just a dream or if Brian really visited me in my sleep. But soon, everything did get better. No matter what, it's comforting to think that Brian came to see me. But I still feel like I'll never be able to fully forgive myself.